Protesters ticked off about police ticking off shoppers in Chicago during the kickoff to this crucial holiday shopping season. Are they helping or hurting their cause? Hi, everybody. I'm Dagan McDowell. This is Bulls and Bears. The Bulls and Bears this week: Gary B. Smith, Jonas Max Ferris, John Layfield, along with Patrice Lee Anuka and Julie Alvin. Welcome to everybody. John, do these protests do more to hurt the cause?
They do, because forget about whether the cause is good or bad. I agree with a lot of what they're protesting, but the problem is this. We have this year in the United States 7,600 retail stores going to close. Compare that to 6,800 that closed at the height of the recession. You're protesting these retail stores in Chicago, and Chicago's tax base has been eroded. All you're going to do is drive people to buy more stuff online or to not shop. The problem you have in Chicago right now, specifically with the police department, with social services, is politicians. That's who you should be protesting. You have $62 billion in unfunded pension and debt obligations into the city of Chicago. Only 33 cents out of every dollar promised by these politicians who knew they couldn't pay for it is funded right now. And to go out there and to hurt retail, you're hurting your own city by doing this. And yes, I think the cause is lost.
Patrice, do these protests help or hurt their cause because they do have the attention and they do get in front of television cameras?
It doesn't help. I mean, if your idea is to try to win people who are either agnostic or opposing you, to create a scenario where you're either cutting the tax base, as the other guest mentioned, or making it difficult for workers to get to work or for shoppers to get to shop, then you're not winning people over to your cause. Criminal justice reform is absolutely a very critical issue if this is what they're really protesting about. But, this year, I don't think that's what they're really trying to go after. Last year, they tried to unseat Rahm Emanuel, and it didn't work. And so they may need to reassess what their tactics are and whether they're actually accomplishing what they set out to do.
Gary B., help or hurt?
I think it hurts, to be honest with you. I agree. Patrice and John made some very good points. As far as the hurt point, it certainly hurts the retailers. When they did this back in 2015, those retailers along the Miracle Mile there in Chicago said their sales were off 25 to 50%. That means that people coming down just turned around and went elsewhere. I guarantee, because I'm this way, people live in their own little bubble. They're not going down there, seeing a protest and saying, I really ought to do something about that. No, what they are is annoyed that they can't do their shopping. So they turn around. As John points out, it hurts the city of Chicago. As Patrice said, people are agnostic. They're not paying attention to this. It's not the right environment. They have their minds on something else. So at best, it does nothing. But as we've seen with the NFL, what happens with their protests, people just turn off the TV and look elsewhere for entertainment.
Well, Julie, I will point out that when these protests in Chicago first started, it was back in 2015. It was after the Laquan McDonald shooting video came out. But since then, in the 2 years after that, you just haven't had the number of protesters out there.
Well, I think that's why it's interesting, for you guys to say that the reason that retail sales were down last year in Chicago on Black Friday have to do with this protest, when in fact the protest didn't really reach critical mass last year. That said, I think if the question is, are we helping or hurting the cause, and the cause is raising awareness for police violence, not, is it helping or hurting the local retail economy? It's certainly helping the cause as far as raising awareness. There's a lot of studies that show that protest is an effective form of raising awareness, of getting policymakers to pay attention, of getting communities to be politically activated. And so if the goal is to raise awareness and to get people to, start taking action against what has been some pretty scary police action in Chicago, specifically with the Laquan McDonald case, and I think that it's helping that particular cause, absolutely.
But Jonas, what is scary is the fact that the homicide number in Chicago this year topped 600 for only the second time in more than a decade.
Well, it's a sign that protests are failing because we've reached peak protest already. If you told me that there'd be less protests with Trump in the White House than Obama over police brutality, I would have been like, that's not likely. And it's because they mismanaged the protests, because I think, to earlier guest's point, people don't know why they're at what did the retailers do? These protests should be at City Hall, at the police stations. These are legitimate issues, but the public just wants to shop, and they're not. This isn't a beef about wages.
Well, speaking of ongoing beefs, unions have a beef with Walmart. Walmart's always open, including on Thanksgiving, and one pro-union group is running this ad about it.
Hard-working Walmart workers with no holiday pay and no chance for a better life. So this Thanksgiving, give thanks for one thing, that you don't work for Walmart.
So that's this pro-union ad, the United Food and Commercial Workers Union, Gary B. But they used to actually protest at like 1,600 stores a few years ago on Black Friday. That stopped. Now this.
Well, exactly. Now, here's the funny thing. You know, you would think that the Walmart workers themselves would be just disgusted with their pay, unhappy with Walmart. That union you're talking about, the UFCW, couldn't even get Walmarters to participate. The people participating in the protests are non-Walmart workers and other union members. They bust in. So on average, the average Walmart person is very happy with their working conditions and their pay. So this is another thing that is just, it's up in the air, and it's, as Julie points out, it might be causing awareness, but there's no follow-up action to it.
But Patrice, I think what the unions are concerned about is if you could, in theory, if you protest enough, if you drive customers away from these stores, you actually destroy jobs for people. You send people shopping online, and you actually hurt workers, whether they're unionized or not.
Well, and that's the unintended consequence of what they're trying to do. I mean, I know someone who worked for Walmart, was an immigrant, new to this country, and worked his way up, built skills, and was able to move beyond just that Walmart job. And I think that's a story that gets lost when you have these unions that are hitting an easy target, which is Walmart, and talking about people not being able to spend time with their families. Perhaps they've already known what their schedule is and made alternative scheduling with their families. So, you know, this is just the unions trying to stay relevant and trying to grow their ranks, which have been increasingly shrinking.
Right. And John, you do at Walmart, if you work on a holiday, you earn a day of paid vacation. And when I worked in the hospitality business, among other jobs that I've had, you know what? You had to work on holidays. It's just a fact.
Yeah, it is just a fact, and a lot of people are very thankful to have a job. And look, Walmart has done more for lower scale pay than unions have. Walmart's the one that did away with the minimum wage, and Target felt compelled to follow suit. Look, this is just one of the dumbest, most misguided ads I've nearly ever seen. It's one of the reasons that unions have died. And you got to understand, I'm not sure why Walmart is so evil. Listen to what Amazon has, they have a 25% growth rate right now. So in the next 3 years, they're going to do as much to retail as far as damage that they have done in the past 20 years at total. We've lost more jobs in retail than we've lost in manufacturing. And going after retail right now, people should be thankful they have jobs, because online is coming, and it's going to destroy a lot of mom and pop stores out there with good jobs.
And Julie, the average full-time hourly worker at Walmart makes, at least at the beginning of this year, makes close to $14 an hour.
Well, I think one thing that's interesting is to say, going back to the initial point that was made that they couldn't get Walmart employees to participate in these protests, a lot of that is because they feared that they would face punitive action. You know, there have been a lot of charges against Walmart for paying women less than men, for mistreating pregnant employees, for having sick leave and disability leave policies that are bordering on illegal. So to say that Walmart is treating its employees really, really well, I think that is certainly questionable.
75% of the store managers started out as hourly employees, and they moved up to making between $50,000 and $170,000 a year. So they wouldn't have stayed with Walmart if they were treated poorly. And in fact, they have really improved their health insurance, for example, in recent years. Jonas, I'm giving you the final word.
I think the mistake here is, again, is a legitimate issue here of workers being sort of dead-end and income inequality. And yet the illusion here is that somehow, like the Amazon workers on Thanksgiving are at the spa and no one's working there. You know, those jobs are also pretty hard and don't pay that much and don't always have upside. And just focusing on the visible worker disenfranchisement and the sense of, oh, the problem's solved, we shut down Walmart. It's like when we moved like kid labor to like abroad, the problem didn't go away. We just don't have it in America anymore, so the problem's over. Workers are treated well. So, again, I think they made a mistake.
Thanks, guys and gals.